Okay, beautiful. Okay. All right. So I don't know if Courtney sent you guys books or whatnot. But hopefully you have.
Did.
She did?
Yes.
All right, great. Excellent. Good. Okay, good.
Via email.
All right, perfect. All right. Hopefully whoever needed one got one and whatever. But hi Al. Dr. Yoshi. Some great people here today. We have a very different group. There's 14 people here. Yes, Andy.
How many people are on TV land today?
I don't know. I think it's I'm not really sure. I can't tell right now, but I'm gonna say maybe a half a dozen. Yeah. So all right, so let's talk about what we're doing. Okay, here. So this weekend is really going to be involved as far as the way that I used to do this class is that we would begin at N, right? We begin in the middle of the alphabet. What I mean is I don't go from the beginning. Okay. And I realize that every time I have a class, and this is from my direct experience, that I have a feel, I always feel like people know exactly what's going on in my head, and they're right with me. And I noticed that that's not true. So I found that repetition, that some of these most foundational things that somebody has been here 30 times, and it's just something that they don't get, and it's okay. It's just the way it is, right? So this class is going to be designed as starting from the beginning, but because it's mod 3, what it's going to do is it's going to go fast. So it's going to be, that's why I say it's like an immersion into QSM3. The first 2 hours are going to be generic. I invited people in to see us to get some philosophy. Maybe they know nothing about QSM3, so forth and so on. But what I'm really dedicated for, and what we're going to talk about this weekend, is how to look at the whole human body in a whole posture, not a spine, not a head, not a neck, not legs, not an ankle, not sciatica, none of these things, but all of those things, right? None of them separately. It's to start understanding, and this was not my intent. My intent was to just do a better job, and I had an anatometer, and to try to just do a better job cervically. And I started asking questions, and I started looking at things, and I found myself in a place of trying to understand how the body works. Because if you understand how it works, like if you push this button, it does this, okay? If I throw you a baseball and I do this, I know how that works. It's going to go that way, okay? But that's not the way the human body works. So I wanted to start understanding it. So when I did something, I started watching the behavior of it. And I watched the behavior because I had either an anatometer or a posture IQ. The posture IQ has just evolved that because it just does a whole lot more measuring, And I started to see how the human body works and how it responds to damage. And I started to see how it started to compensate in sections. And I go, that's weird. That doesn't feel right. That doesn't look right. That shouldn't be, from a mechanics point of view of the way the facets are and the way the body is built. It just doesn't work. It's not right. So I started poking at places and trying to figure out how to get from the upper cervical area or the neck area, is to try to figure out how to make things pop better, okay? So that's what this weekend is about, is to be able to look at a whole human pattern that has been damaged, and to see and to classify it, because what I see is a handful of patterns. There's only so many pieces that this thing could be bent into, okay? And yeah, it's got a lot of bends in between in the spine, because the spine can keep bending. There's only so much way the pelvis can go, right or left. It can go forward and backward, right? That's it, man. And as it goes right or left, it drops down or drops, so we got all 3 planes. It's all covered, right? Shoulders do the same thing. The head does the same thing. God knows that moves like a baseball because it's solid, So there's patterns that occur. I see those patterns, and I understand what that a majority of people, it's never 100%. That's the beauty of what I want to teach, is because if you do something, I'm not teaching you how to do something. Here's A, do B. Here's C, do D. It doesn't work that way, okay? It does with a lot of the patterns, but I'm trying to teach people how to understand the mechanics and how this thing behaves. We see that nowhere else in any other industry in healthcare. None, zero. Nobody's looking at how it behaves. They look at this hurts, that's that. It's because you have a degenerated disc there. Oh, look at that arthritis there. Oh, look at that head tilt. Oh, your atlas is tipped. We're bigger than that. We're a nervous system that is responding to stress, to damage, and it has a certain capacity. And pain and syndromes like that are all indicators of it actually asking for help. I shifted at one point and I said, I said to myself, my shoulder that's hurting me on the right side is like, it's my bad shoulder. It's my good shoulder. It's the one that's hurting. Why? Because it's doing all the work and it's telling me it's getting overloaded, right? So I started to shift and started looking at my right shoulder or my left knee and saying, it's not hurting because it's bad. It's actually the thing that's fatiguing because it's carrying the suitcase on that side and it's fatiguing out and it's telling me. And you do it long enough and it keeps tapping, and eventually it just breaks down completely. And that's what we see in our office, okay? So I realized that good care was not about the things that I was looking at in pieces, okay? Not that they weren't right, but they weren't the whole thing. And I went from a place of a bone out of place to fascia to understanding that the whole thing's really just the nervous system. And it's locking down in fear in a pattern, and we got to release it and try to get it as close to what we think is best as possible. That statement shouldn't even be in the state. We need to just get it as best as possible. And we want to manage it so it can be as stable as possible. And then you do whatever else you're doing in your office around that to heal the tissue, and you've got maybe something that tips nicely for you, okay? But a corrective care understanding of human posture three-dimensionally is what I'm about, okay? And nobody else is measuring the whole thing. Nobody is measuring it standing up. People are still taking pictures sitting down, which just lets the whole nervous system go, or they do a leg check, or whatever we're doing, or we're measuring heat. These are all syndromes and breakdowns and pieces of this thing collapsing. And this is the big picture. So what would you do with this? You would do this to that. What would you do to this one? You would do that to that one. Okay. What would you do this to this? Well, maybe you would do that and then that, whoop, like that. And you could just access those pieces. So this class, which is another thing that I'm going to talk about big today, is there's a point where you have to look at I love putting people up on the posture IQ. I love having numbers. Okay. But I'll tell you what, I look at people now and I just know what I got to do. Okay, do I measure them and take their numbers? Yeah. Before and after? Yeah, because that's telling me consistency, stability. Those are, what things may be weak, what things may be lagging. Somebody's legs are off 10 millimeters and their upper body is off 20. And you move it and you adjust them and the legs go to 0 and the top is an 8. Didn't come all the way up. They come back in and the legs are only off 2 where they were at 10 before, and the top is off, and you say up, and you start understanding where the weakness is. So you start honing and changing the adjustment to access that nervous system lockdown on that point and those pathways in which it locks and try to restore it and open it up there. And that's doctoring. That's learning. That's doing, That's making a decision, okay? It's not just a number. It's a feel, okay? And you could see it. You could just see the way people break down and boom, okay? So there's a very interesting thing that I really noticed. It's so funny. It's so funny. I'm going to talk about this weekend. Is that we're going to also look at. And you're going to laugh at this. Is like it's so funny. I was an upper cervical doctor in a sense that the atlas was everything. The atlas was everything. I just focused on that atlas. It was everything. Atlas, brainstem, dentate ligament theory, dentate ligament theory, dentate ligament theory. And I realized at one point that I started getting away from that, and I started doing C7 and C5 and all kinds of stuff, and they're equally as important. But I've come back to trying to see, now that I have the knowledge that I have of the pathways and the setup and understanding what that person needs, is can I make it all happen from C1? And we're going to talk about that tomorrow also, and how to try to even do that. Okay, that'll be something new too. It's a lot of new stuff, man. It's cool. Yeah, it's great. And it's all, it's not new. It's just understanding a greater understanding of, of what's going on. The biomechanics, somebody's here, there, and their legs are there, and this is there, and that is there, and all that kind of stuff. A lot of this stuff you never use, but it's to understand what the human body is. If we want to be an expert in posture, I like that. There are things that I measure on the posture IQ or that I talk about in the class, that will not apply once you put them down on the table, will not apply at all. Okay, because, and not that they're not right or wrong, but they don't. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's the adjustment that matters. So there's a lot of stuff that's just to know that I teach that have nothing to do with the adjustment, but the understanding of how the body works. And I think that's fascinating because that's what I think we're experts in. I mean, that's what we should be experts in. I come back to that age-old question that I asked when I realized it is, if somebody has a right low pelvis, where should their shoulders be? Low on the right, low on the left, forward or backward? And if we want to help people, we should be able to understand that. Fair? No doubt, right? Fair. Yeah. I mean, and then we call us the experts. Okay?